It's March. Happy spring, everybody. Only it doesn't feel like spring because it's like 45 degrees outside because winter, which didn't want to arrive at all in December, is now here right before spring break for Dallas Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star-Telegram sports columnist Mac Engel, and I'm joined by my good friend, co-host, and partner in crime, Mr. Clarence E. Hill Jr. Mr. Hill was in Indianapolis last week for the NFL Combine, where amazingly, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys did not talk to the media. That never happens, ever. Now, last week, I was at AT&T Stadium for a boxing promotional event where Jerry Jones attended, and they made it very clear that Jerry was not going to take any questions, that anything about anything other than boxing, that anything Cowboys related would be handled in Indianapolis at the Combine, where Clarence and other members of the local media would ask him questions about football and more specific, voyeurism stuff. And then Jerry, believe it or not, actually ducked the media with a, quote, medical issue. Clarence, you've covered Jerry for a long time. What do you think this issue was?
Rich Dalrymple-itis. Rich Dalrymple-itis. I think that's what it was, a voyeurism-itis, a voyeurism, or whatever it is. It was interesting because, we've been waiting for Jerry all week, and they said he was coming, and we talked to Steven and some other people about them setting it up, and then all of a sudden he wasn't coming, and we got a message from the Cowboys organization that he had a medical issue. 5 minutes later, we run to Stephen Jones. He's like, what?
Had they not coordinated their lives yet?
Then Stephen Jones tells him, well, he's doing some things with Roger Goodell that's taking up his time. I'm like, so he was at a press conference Wednesday in Arlington. Thursday, Friday, he said he has a medical issue, that he can't fly back to Indy. He's always at Indy, and now he's, doing something with Goodell that is taking up his time. It was, I've never known Jerry to duck the media. They could have said, we can talk about football and just don't answer these questions. But we're going to ask the questions, and you have to ask the questions, and can avoid them. We asked Stephen a question about the Dalrymple situation and whether they felt they had a culture issue, a culture problem with the Cowboys, and he said no, but he didn't like the question being asked. But we had to ask the question. Jerry had talked, I think, last week with Channel 5 in a pre-planned interview that was about something else, and they said, we got to ask you this, and he gave some generic answer about
he gave it a look-see. Clarence gave it a look-see.
But it was a softball, and certainly wasn't a tough question. But and when we see him again, these questions they're not going to go away.
No, they're not going to go away, nor should they go away. But in my experience, the more I've thought about this, I don't think fans care, Clarence. And the reason why, hang on just a second. Let me say this. When the Dallas Mavericks went through their front office embarrassment situation with sexual misconduct claims by members of their front office staff, fans didn't care. They just didn't care. And now the media cared. Certainly the people who work there cared, which makes it a relevant story. Does it affect people who work for the Dallas Cowboys or want to work for the Dallas Cowboys? That's why it's relevant. But I got to tell you, I'm not surprised anymore. Fans just want their football. That's it. That's all they care about.
Yeah, and because it's a member of the PR staff, it's not a member of the front office, not a member of the coaching staff, it's not a player. Rich Dalrymple is replaceable and sadly forgettable in this sense for Cowboys fans. Yeah,
you're right. I think that's a good way to put it. Clarence, even in light of the fact that the NFL has said, hey, the Cowboys did it. They looked into it. We're satisfied. The fact that the Cowboys said that they did an internal investigation and all that. Do you think much is going to change out of all of this?
Well, other than the particulars who are handling the PR staff, no, I don't think much is going to change. At this point, there's no smoking gun that it is a gateway to something bigger. Almost like in Washington, where you had multiple layers of the organization and multiple people in the organization involved in a bad culture. Right now, at this point, from the Cowboys standpoint and from the league standpoint, it was isolated with Rich Downriver. We know Rich is, there's some boys will be boys stuff that happens out there that we know is not just about Rich. No, it's not what you know, is what you can prove.
Yep. I think that's accurate and fair. And I think the only thing that may come out as a result of this is some more lawyers maybe knocking on the Cowboys and Jerry Jones' doors with tales of inappropriate behavior, all in exchange. What they're really looking for isn't necessarily a change in culture, but a settlement in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement signature. Let's move on to another subject. The offseason is here for the NFL. Lots been going on the last couple of days, but the Dallas Cowboys are busy franchise tagging one of their own, Dalton Schultz, the tight end, who moved up the depth chart and has really had quite a nice season. It will have the franchise tag at $10.9 million. Clarence, we've seen the Cowboys use this franchise tag before. Anthony Spencer got it a couple of times, all in name to avoid a longer-term deal. Then sometimes they use the franchise tag just as basically a bridge to get a long-term deal done. Which one of these instances do you think fits Dalton Schultz? This is a one-year thing to avoid a long-term deal, or ultimately this will lead to a long-term deal?
Well, it depends on how much Dalton Schultz wants and how much you think Dalton Schultz is worth. And listen, good for Dalton Schultz.
Yep.
4th-round pick out of Stanford.
Right.
I thought it was going to be cut 2 years ago because he really hadn't shown much. Blake Jarwin got hurt, and he kind of, had a great back-to-back seasons, 2020 and 2021. Dak Prescott's Linus' blanket, but no one's checking for Dalton Schultz. No one is going into the game saying, "I must stop Dalton Schultz to stop the Cowboys' offense." They were doing that with Amari Cooper. They're not doing that with Dalton Schultz. The numbers suggest, because he's a free agent, because the Cowboys have no one else on his roster, they have to do what they can to keep him. Certainly, they would like to sign him to a multi-year deal, but I'm not going too high for Dalton Schultz. And you're going to draft a tight end, whether you sign him or not. But I just don't think that you overpay a guy like Dalton Schultz, who was a nice line as a blanket with Dak Prescott. He was a check down option with Dak Prescott. He was not a primary target. Some of the other great tight ends were getting all the money, are primary targets. They are game breakers. They're guys that the defense must contain to slow down their offense. I don't think that's the same for Dalton Schultz, but good for him.
No, you said it. Good for him indeed, because I think this is a guy who, when they drafted him, the thought was, well, he'll develop into a nice second tight end, that type of player. And considering the bad luck that Blake Jarwin's had, to see what Dalton Schultz has done, more power to him. I never thought this would happen. And, you just said it. You thought they would have cut him. And now all of a sudden, he's a starting tight end.
Right.
And he'll be the starting tight end in 2022, which more power to him. I cannot imagine that they're going to want to go long-term with this guy, that this is a one-year deal. And, hey, if he breaks out and has a monster year, pay him then, but they don't have to. And in the meantime, he just got lifetime's worth of money for a one-year deal. I think it's such a win for Dalton Schultz. I'm stunned that he's able to do this. Good
it's
for
a huge
him.
win for Dalton Schultz. But you tell me, would you rather have Dalton Schultz or you rather have Amari Cooper? Is it one or the other?
I think there's more going on with Amari Cooper than just about a contract. I don't think the Cowboys like Amari Cooper. That's my own personal feeling. And talking to a couple of guys, my personal feeling is somebody, either Mike McCarthy, Stephen Jones, somebody there is just like, I'm not crazy about Amari Cooper. And Dalton Schultz is one of those guys. That's an easy guy to like. You know what I mean?
No, you like him because he's going to be there. He shows up. He's going to be where he's supposed to be.
Yep.
But at what price? And all it becomes, it's a price tag on everything.
Yeah, 10.9. It's crazy. Even Clarence, it's crazy. He's going to get almost $11 million. He's going to be paid like a top 5 tight end in the NFL. When you and I both know he's not. But who cares? Go get it.
He's not that guy. Could they have gotten some else in the free agent market? Could they drafted somebody to do what Dalton Schultz done? And again, we haven't even talked about the fact that he can't block.
That's the other part of it that blows me away. Like when you talk about top tight ends in the NFL, George Kittle, can he block?
No.
But he's a difference game breaker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
He stretches the field.
Totally.
Yeah, all of that.
Travis Kelce.
Same thing. It's Travis Kelce. He stretches the field. He's run after catch. He's
Kyle
a difference
Pitts.
maker. He's a big three on their offense.
Kyle Pitts, the guy in Atlanta.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts does it all, but Kyle Pitts is a special. Yeah, those type of guys. Again, Dalton Schultz is not of that ilk, but he's going to get paid like that. It's almost, a smaller version of Dak Prescott is, he's not Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers, but that's the going rate to pay quarterbacks. You got to pay him.
And you said it.
Don't have any tight ends, and they need one, especially with Blake Jarwin having surgery. His career is in doubt. There's no one on the roster. You can go get a rookie, but is he going to, make an impact right away? You have to have a placeholder, and he's that placeholder in contract and name.
And you just hit the nail on the head. They're going to have to spend a decent draft pick. I'm talking 1 through 4. They're not going to spend a first-round pick on a tight end, but they're going to have to go get a tight end relatively high because the guy that they have, that they just paid $11 million to, basically, like you said, he can't block. He's an okay pass. He's a pretty good pass catcher, good pro, but he can't block. You mentioned Amari Cooper. There's another name floating out there that has a salary issue with the Dallas Cowboys. You reported it first. The Dallas Cowboys knocked on defensive end Tank Lawrence's door and said, "Hey, Tank, how about a pay cut?" To which Tank said, "Here's my middle finger. Talk to my agent." We'll talk about Amari Cooper here in a second, but Tank Lawrence is supposed to be paid about $19 million this season. Any chance at all that he gets cut and he comes back at a lower number?
Yeah, I think they're going to negotiate or try to negotiate some type of pay reduction that has him getting some of his money back. If not,
how does that work? Do you think he come in at half that figure?
If they don't meet him halfway on some of this money, he'll say, "I'll go to free agent route and go get my money elsewhere." He wants to stay here, of course, but he knows he'll have a market. And this is the first offseason. I think Tank is going healthy since he signed his contract.
He had the back surgery right after he signed his deal.
No back surgery, no shoulder surgery. He had a foot, issue during the season. He finished the season strong. He only played 7 games, but the final 7 games, he was strong.
Good.
He was a very impactful player. He looked like the player we thought he was a couple of years ago when he signed the big money. Of course, he's 30, and you don't have all those things you have to worry about. But, this defense is not better without DeMarcus Lawrence.
No doubt about it.
And DeMarcus Lawrence, there's only 2 people who are like DeMarcus Lawrence on this roster, on this defense. That's Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. They're the only beasts. When I say beasts, they're only dogs they have out there. And you lose DeMarcus Lawrence, you lose a big part of identity of what this defense wants to be about. And Micah Parsons has that, but there's really no one else that has that on that defense, especially on that defensive line.
Would you guess right now that Tank Lawrence will be a Dallas Cowboy in 2022?
I would think Tank more than Amari Cooper for sure. Tank more than Amari Cooper, but you got to understand that they still have to, they still have a free decision to make on Randy Gregory. He's a guy they also want to bring back. Who's
about J-Ron Kearse?
They didn't give him the tag. They gave it to to Dalton Schultz because the tag for defensive ends is almost $20 million. They weren't going to give it to guarantee that type of money to Randy Gregory, but they are confident, believe that he will sign a team-friendly deal and stay. But yeah, you brought up Javon Kearse, Randy Gregory, Javon Kearse. Those are priorities in free agency. When the Cowboys look at guys they must bring back who are free agents who are going to get looked at by other teams, is those 2 guys. In addition to navigating what you're going to do with DeMarcus Lawrence.
So that's Tank Lawrence. Now we have to talk about Amari Cooper. And we've already talked about this a couple of times that have been tossed out, that the Cowboys just may say goodbye to Amari Cooper, who, in my mind, should be a Cowboy for another 7-8 years. I think you would kind of agree with me on that. You and I think he's that kind of player, the kind of wide receiver who can age effectively and gracefully. It does not sound like, at least according to what you have said and others have said, Amari Cooper ain't coming back here mostly because of his contract at $20 million a season. Is it a formality, Clarence? Is there any scenario in which you can envision Amari Cooper comes back and as a Cowboy in 2022.
No, certainly not after they tagged Schultz today, and I don't see it. And it's a money thing, it's a catches thing, it's a targets thing. It's like I'm not. Even if I believe you're worth $20 million, I'm not using you like a $20 million player. So I'm investing my money wrong. Yeah, I'm not giving you $20 million to be the highest paid receiver in the league and have you get the third most catches and the second most targets on the team. That's just not smart money management.
He's 27 years old. So let's revisit this. At the time that Cowboys made the trade to get him from the Raiders, who were in Oakland then at the time, they had to give up a first-round pick to do it. Amari Cooper comes to town, tears it up. Cowboys go to the playoffs. They beat the Seahawks. They get to the divisional round. Amari Cooper scores a touchdown in the divisional round against the Rams, a Rams team that went on to blow out the Cowboys in that game, get to the Super Bowl and barely lose to the Patriots and Tom Brady. We were all saying at the time, Cowboys won that trade hands down. Now Amari Cooper's fixing to get cut. How you like that? I use fixing to. Was the trade worth it in light of they didn't even get 5 years out of him?
He elevated Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott will not be the quarterback, the player he is, if they don't make that trade. He elevated this offense and Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott owes half of his $40 million contract to Amari Cooper because you remember before that Amari Cooper trade and where Dak Prescott was and thought processes on Dak Prescott, after Dez Bryant, when they were doing a receiver by committee, he made Dak Prescott into a franchise quarterback. So that alone made the trade worth it for the Cowboys.
So now that they're going to cut him, and now it looks like the market is going to look dramatically different. So different, they might not even be able to keep Cedric Wilson, if you believe the numbers, which, believe me, I understand this time of year, this is always crazy rumor time. But let's just say Cooper's cut. So you say he's gone. Cedric Wilson is gone. And now you got CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, and Michael Gallup comes back, and he's good.
They're trying to sign Michael Gallup back. Hey, they just signed Noah Brown to a 1-year deal, minimum deal. This draft is loaded with receivers. They will take. They
say that all the time.
It's true. I always say receivers like 2 and 3 guards in the NBA. They're dime a dozen. There's always one out there.
They're not doing it in the first round. They're taking an offensive lineman.
Well, they should. But if Jamison Williams is there, you don't take him. Of course, you'll kick their butt because he's injured. Take another guy that's hurt.
Would you take another injured guy?
Receiver, huh?
Would you take another injured guy?
Jamison Williams has a chance to be special.
Okay. Yeah, he looks pretty good.
They're going to take an offensive line who's going to be serviceable. They're going to be a good guy, good guard to plug and play at 24. Not a Zach Martin type, but somebody can plug and play at 24. But Jamison Wilson, if he wasn't injured, he would be a top 5, top 10 pick.
He's not going to drop down that far.
Oh, he is probably, at least from all the mock drafts I've seen, just because he's coming out the injury. And there's so many other receivers out there. But it's something that they can use defensive line help. They need a linebacker. They need linebacker help. They have a lot of needs, and we'll see what they do in the draft. And so we'll talk about the draft. But just talk. My point is this: since the end of the season, when Jared was mad after the loss, okay, this has been a bad offseason for
horrible offseason.
You go back, you have the voyeurism scandal, and now you're talking about parting with 2 of your best players. The Cowboys have not improved their team to get over the hump, to put all that channel all in anger into something positive. They've had their coach on a hot seat. They've had all type of negativity regarding their coach. They got the Rich Dalrymple scandal. Now they're possibly talking about losing 2 of one of the best receiver on offense and one of the better players on defense. They are not improved. I mean, obviously
they're not improved.
And we still got the draft, but this is right now not a better team, better situation, better environment than they were at the end of the season.
So they're not improved. We're going to ask one more question here on Cowboys Overtime, and I'll let you go. They may not be dramatically improved, but did the NFC East get dramatically easier here in the last month? Hear me out. Tom Brady retires, right? So the Buccaneers now are going to go with Blaine Gabbert. You and I are better quarterbacks than Blaine Gabbert. So the Buccaneers go from the 2nd seed in the NFC East with Tom Brady. They're not making the playoffs next season, and you and I both know it. Now the Seattle Seahawks trade Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos in exchange for Drew Lock and 50 draft picks. Those are two top-tier passers who are now out of your conference.
And Garoppolo is probably getting traded, or they're going to move on from Garoppolo in San Francisco and go with Trey Lance.
Yep.
I don't
know. They're going to go with Trey Lance,
better.
but I think Trey Lance, the way San Francisco's defense kicked around the Cowboys in the playoffs, I think Trey Lance with one leg could have beaten the Cowboys. But with those moves, but you included it, I didn't mention the Aaron Rodgers thing. Aaron Rodgers is coming back to the Green Bay Packers after signing a 4-year deal worth $25 billion. So Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Packer forever. But did the NFC East get easier so that would sort of offset anything that hasn't happened positively for the Cowboys so far this offseason?
Well, I mean, the goal is still to get over the hump. I think it was set for the Cowboys to get over the hump last year. They didn't do it at a home playoff game. It's really not about them. It's about the Cowboys. It's about them. They have to look within. Can they play their best football when it matters most? It doesn't matter who, is on the other side and how much, quote unquote, easier the path is. When they get to the playoffs, they're still going to play good teams, whether it's the Packers or the Rams or the 49ers or whoever else, rises up. Can the Cowboys rise up and reach their potential? That's the issue. I asked the McCarthy if it was mental with the Cowboys. Is it mental? He talked about them, being nervous. Is it mental? And he just said we just got to keep getting there and make it had to get to the playoffs. But right now, it's a problem. They have to be able to get over the hump on their own, on themselves. Not about the other teams, it's about them.
No, you bring up a good point. I do wonder how much of this now. These players have been around this enough and they've heard this enough. They're just into their own heads and they're looking for things to go wrong. This has been 25 years, right? And it's one thing if you're 25 years and you play for the Detroit Lions or something like that. This is the Dallas Cowboys, arguably the most visible sports franchise in North America. And I do wonder if sometimes these guys are just a mile into their own heads and now are looking for things to go wrong because they have. Even when they've gone right, you win 12-5. That's pretty good in NFL, regular season. You win an NFC East championship. That's pretty damn good. And then the minute that game started to go sideways against the 49ers in the playoffs, I wonder if those guys were like, oh, crap, here it comes. We're not going to win this damn game. Sure enough, they got their butts handed to them.
One good news is that, Russell Wilson turned down an opportunity to go to Washington to go to Denver. The Redskins wanted the Commanders wanted him. He turned down the Commanders to go to Denver.
Who would want to play for Washington? As dysfunctional as a mess the Cowboys are sometimes, they can always look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? We're not Washington. Clarence, this has been fun. Enjoyed talking to you as always. Make sure to catch all of his fine work on StarTelegram.com covering the Cowboys. We'll see you next week on Cowboys Overtime.